Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for tuning in. When Lindsey Graham is going to vote for Kash Patel or any of Trump's nominees, they are going to pass with or without Mitch McConnell and Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins. So the tiebreaker will be J.D. Vance for Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel and any other nominee. It really doesn't matter if the never-Trumpers that are left, and in a couple of years, you will have a new Kentucky senator. I believe McConnell's seat is up either next year or the year after. And you'll have a Trump Republican. But hit subscribe to this channel right now, ladies and gentlemen. Your support via Super Chat is greatly, greatly appreciated. I really, really appreciate all your support. And the Super Chat, CBS News, Senator Lindsey Graham says he's ready to vote for Kash Patel. It's a done deal. We will have a new Federal Bureau of Investigation director. Thank God. Little Eddie Van, hello. Hello, sir. JPAT09, hello. Tough It Out, hello. Everyone here, hello. Thank you so very much. God bless you. JPAT09, thank you so very, very much. Insubordinate, hello. Let's get started, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get started. This is the new Federal Bureau of Investigation Director. I love Kash Patel. Not because of tribalism, not because he's on my team, not because he supports Trump, because he saw the biggest lie ever told in American political history, one of the greatest lies, that Trump was a Kremlin operative. That is not only one of the most sinister, diabolical, deceptive statements, lies, outright lies ever told in American history. But we're going to find out if people committed crimes. Hit subscribe to this channel. Your Super Chat support's greatly appreciated. Did people commit crimes trying to deceive and defraud the United States into thinking that Trump was a Kremlin operative? 18 U.S. Code 371. Did people lie? Did government officials lie? Yes or no? Yes or no, ladies and gentlemen? If you are a wonderful, morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrat, you stumble upon this channel and you're like, oh my God, he's a former Bernie bro. It's like, well, you know what? I like record low poverty and I like an anti-war foreign policy. That's how you go from Bernie Sanders to Trump. Okay, there's a reason that Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney and all the never-Trumpers who were the Bush-Cheney Republicans voted for Harris. There's a reason. She was the most militant choice. As was Biden. We saw the catastrophe on the world stage with Biden. Weekend at Bernie's. Hit subscribe to this channel. Your Super Chat is greatly appreciated. To the members, thank you. God bless you all. Let's get started.
All right, two very corrupt agencies, the FBI and the CIA. I'm not breaking news here, but they need to be swept completely clean, all right? Joining us now to talk about it, Kash Patel, former Deputy Director of National Intelligence and former Pentagon Chief of Staff. Kash, welcome. Appreciate it very much. We know that John Ratcliffe is going to the CIA. I think he's a pretty tough guy, and he knows where.
We went from Comey and McCabe and Wray to Kash Patel. We went from John Brennan all the way to John Ratcliffe. Okay, this is, it's the equivalent of, it's the equivalent of going from a Toyota to a Lamborghini.
At least some of the bodies are buried. What do you think? What should you look for?
You know, Johnny's a personal friend. He was in Congress when we did Russiagate when I was a chief investigator, and then later when he was DNI, and I was the deputy director. He's a fantastic choice. He understands the intelligence community, but also you got to remember he was one of the stalwarts in Congress, who's a former federal prosecutor that stood up and said, "Look, my FBI and my DOJ that I used to run and work in lied to the American people, lied to a federal court, and illegally surveilled the president and thousands of Americans." And he took a lot of heat for it, but he was right.
He was right, absolutely. Now, we haven't heard FBI. Now, Matt Gaetz, Justice Department, that does oversee the FBI, but we need a strong FBI director.
Look, whether it's FBI, DOJ, DOD, I think the narrative and the mandate that President Trump received is simple. They want accountability inside of Washington, D.C. I'm not saying everyone in these institutions, far be it from everyone, has corrupted them, but the leadership structure, for example, at the Department of Defense, where I was chief of staff, these 4-star and 3-star generals, a lot of them are fantastic, Larry, but some of them, I don't understand what they're doing. They're there for their next promotion, and they're there to propagate DEI and white rage and climate change. But these are the same folks. When President Trump gets criticized for these appointments, why don't we ask the American public to say, hey, these are the folks that gave us the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. These are the folks that drone struck 7 Afghani children in response to that and didn't take responsibility for that. These are the folks that failed the no-fail mission of the United States and are now leading us into multiple world wars. Of course it's time for a change, and that's what America voted for.
I mean, let's go back to this woke Pentagon.
Kash Patel is not only qualified, he knows exactly how, and this is why Trump is declassifying everything with JFK, with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., with everything that went on in modern American history the past 50, 60 years. Why do you think Trump is declassifying everything? Okay, very likely Patel and Ratcliffe and Trump want everyone to know that these agencies that Democrats worshipped for so long have a history, maybe a checkered past, maybe let's just say a controversial history that the wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats choose not to address. Okay, this is a new era in American politics, and I mean, I told you this would happen every single day for the past 4 years, but even I am in disbelief. I am stunned at how quickly this is all taking place. He's basically FBI director already, ladies and gentlemen. Hit subscribe if you're new. We're almost at 272,000 subs. We're on our way to 300,000 subs, people. It's because of you.
DEI, Pentagon, etc. And Pete Hegseth wrote a brilliant book about that. He's a much decorated military veteran himself and a very smart fellow, as we all know. He's being criticized for this. I think he should be praised for this. I mean, this is a kind of sweep of the Pentagon that you have to have every few, 30 years, nothing, correct me if I'm wrong. George C. Marshall, great wartime leader, had a similar sweep with generals and top officers, redid the headquarters, redid the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I don't know. Have we done anything like this since then? I mean, that was a long time ago, like 75 years ago, some odd.
Well, Ike Eisenhower warned us about it 60 years ago. He said, the defense industrial complex, if you let it, will overtake not just the DOD, but all of Washington, D.C., and it has. And they do a lot of good work. But all of these folks that are in these leadership positions that have corrupted it are running a circular revolving door. Hire me into the DOD, then hire me into your 7-figure payday at this defense industrial contract. By the way, while I was serving as Secretary of Defense, let me make sure you get $1 billion contract. This has to stop. This has to be broken apart. I mean, you're talking about a Defense Department, just one clear example, in the Ukraine conflict. They didn't lose $1 billion by wasting it. They lost $1 billion. They can't find it.
Right.
And this Department of Defense, and you're the economic guy, has not passed a budget audit in 16 years. Of course it's time for sweeping leadership.
What you mean hasn't passed a budget audit? This is interesting new info.
When the government loses money, it doesn't really lose money. The money's allocated. It doesn't really lose the money.
Yeah, so as Chief of Staff, I oversee the entire Department of Defense, and every year there's an annual financial audit that checks the balances and the books, and the Department of Defense has not passed an audit of its budget in over a decade.
Isn't that something? Now, what about the FBI? There was a great story a couple days ago, I think it was the Washington Times. FBI leaders shocked and stunned at Trump's victory. And then it goes on, it takes the next 20 or so paragraphs that they couldn't believe it happened, and they may have to hand in their resumes. Shocked and so, why would the FBI be so political? That's not their mission. Well, the answer is maybe they're all liberal Democrats over there, and maybe that's part of it, or that they are the ones who were in charge of weaponization.
President Obama was very successful. His administration was very successful in changing the ideology of intel agencies and the Department of Defense and the State Department. Presidents do this, okay? All of these government agencies are an extension of the political climate and a presidential administration, okay? The difference is that the Bush Republicans didn't really have a problem with President Obama's Democratic Party ideology. What took place is to gain some type of edge, to differentiate themselves from the establishment Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld Republicans that are just fine with the Kerrys and Clintons and Bidens of the world. Democrats adopted these fringe ideologies that they truly don't believe in, but they kind of just utilize to try to seem morally superior. I'm speaking in broad, vague, algorithmically friendly terms. So the modern-day Democratic Party is aligned with the Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld Republican Party, which is basically extinct politically. But to differentiate themselves, they've then adopted, very bizarre ideologies. And so you have a Democratic Party that really doesn't represent the average liberal or Democrat. But then you have millions upon millions of people that didn't get the memo. They just think that Democrats are morally superior because every single day for the past 8 years, they were told that Trump is a Kremlin operative who is a bigoted, horrible human being. And they only believe lies. Everything that they've heard about Trump has been a lie by omission or a patently false claim.
I mean, here, Melania Trump really refused to talk to Jill Biden afterwards because Melania was still furious at the FBI invasion of Mar-a-Lago, down the road from here. What business did they have? What business did the FBI have inviting CNN at 5 a.m. in the morning to bust up Roger Stone's house down in Fort Lauderdale, or wherever Roger was living, when all they had to do was contact the lawyer?
It's called marketing and public relations and advertising.
The answer is left-wing politics.
Now, look, as a former national security prosecutor at the Department of Justice, where I worked with FBI agents all across the country and around the world, the question, again, we should be asking those folks that are quote-unquote outraged, where was your career official outrage when Russiagate occurred and you illegally surveilled a president? Where was your career outrage when hundreds of thousands of Americans were unlawfully surveilled in 1 year alone, just 2 years ago? Where was your outrage when houses of worship were raided, or where our children go to school, the FBI was posting up outside? So I didn't see or hear any of that outrage then, but it goes to your point. It shows their political proclivities. And the worst weapon we have in government is a two-tier system of justice that's been weaponized. So I think some of these folks are finally showing us their hypocrisy. And I think it's time that Donald Trump came in there with the sweeping mandate that the American public gave him to return a singular system of constitutional justice. Here's the thing. There is no revenge list. If Donald Trump is successful,
there's no revenge list. There's no revenge list at all. There's just a list of people who could have broken the law trying to set up and frame Trump, Kash Patel, others, Roger Stone, everyone around Trump, Devin Nunes, going after Lindsey Graham, the never-Trumpers, the wonderful Democrats who lied to the American people, stating that Trump tried to rebel against the country, that he was a Kremlin operative, that he told you to ingest things, that he said both sides. These are all patently false things. They did the same thing with Musk recently, Elon Musk. The power in America has shifted to Trump, thank God, because Democrats were irresponsible, malicious, and petulant.
Successful, he will make these institutions, the FBI, DOJ, DOD, etc., successful forever.
Do what they're supposed to do, which is to say, I would say, mete out the law fairly in a neutral fashion with the Constitution. What's the name of the book?
Government Gangsters.
All right, I wanted to get that in. Kash Patel, thank you very much.
For more on this, let's bring in former Deputy Director of National Intelligence and former Department of Defense Chief of Staff Kash Patel. Kash, your reaction to just the president's remarks, and he was, quite frankly, very reserved, given what has gone on today.
I think it's great to be with you guys. I think he showed extreme composure at a time when any other American would have completely lost it. And I think that shows the brilliance of President Trump's ability to put the two-tier system of justice on display for all Americans to see in civil and criminal proceedings in state and federal court. And look, as a former federal prosecutor and a public defender, an individual who actually prosecuted and defended fraud cases, let's just lay this out as simple as we can. In order for there to be a fraud case, there has to be a fraud victim who was defrauded. And in this instance, as the president highlighted, this judge convicted him before the trial even began of this fraud and then made up monetary numbers to substantiate that judgment. On top of which, the president was denied a right to a jury trial because Letitia James used some statute for consumer protection fraud issues to prosecute Trump civilly that precluded him from a jury trial of his peers. So there are all sorts of constitutional.
Trump didn't commit an FEC violation. That will be overturned by the Supreme Court. I do a million live streams on that. That will be overturned by the Supreme Court. 100%. It basically already was with the immunity victory, the victory over the Colorado Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, and a state cannot level a federal crime against anyone without the Department of Justice, or in this case, the Federal Election Commission, involved. Furthermore, the immunity victory in the Supreme Court protects Trump from Hope Hicks's testimony and almost certainly Michael Cohen's likely perjury. He almost certainly perjured himself a billion times, potentially. Like the Honorable James Comey says, potentially, possibly.
Constitutional issues with this, but what the American public has seen is a rigged system of justice against a political opponent of the DOJ and the State Attorney General's office in New York, just like in Georgia and elsewhere, all to do one thing: rob American people of the decision at the electorate day to elect Donald Trump.
Well, you know, Kash, it's interesting watching Trump's reaction to all of this, and you noted his composure. I think a lot of people would probably be freaking out if they just opened up a bill for $355 million. But it is remarkable how what an opportunity it gives a guy.
Trump might get $10 billion from CBS for a defamation suit because guess what? Just like ABC News, he got 15 million. He might get 10 billion because, or whatever, a billion, 2 billion, 800 million, whatever. They'll settle it. CBS deceptively edited a video of Harris, and Lord knows what they did with Biden, but to make it seem that she was coherent and concise and thorough in her responses, which of course was not the case. So, I mean, it's like if they're basically American media, most of American media is essentially working for the Democratic Party. Everyone knows this. This is not hyperbolic. It's not a hyperbolic statement. Okay. I mean, you could read like an Associated Press and Reuters article like Trump making false claims. But they'll never say that Adam Schiff or Democrats made false claims pertaining to Trump-Russia. They'll say, well, there was a reason to be suspicious. But, you know, the emotion, like suspicion, disbelief, you can't have that towards Democrats. Otherwise, it's categorically false, lies. But if you are distrustful of Democrats, it's, I mean, if you don't trust, like, a Republican or Trump, it's like, well, there's a reason. There's a good reason. But if you don't trust Democrats, it's like you're believing lies and information that misinforms.
A guy like Trump that is so on brand for political purposes. He can use this, as he did just now, to break into prime time on television and make yet another statement. And who knows how many people who either don't like Trump or are on the fence about Trump, who are appalled at what they're seeing in the political process. He might have done him some good and won some voters over.
No, what about, forget the billionaires for a second. What about the pizza shop owner or the bartender or the, fashion shop owner in New York City who dares to be an America First candidate, who doesn't want his stores robbed, who wants crime tamped down? I mean, Donald Trump probably just scored slews of victories with all these individuals. But look, I'm a New Yorker. I'm from Queens and Long Island. And I just saw a verdict which almost degrades New York City to the crisis we saw in the 60s and the 70s. And that's not a position I want for the town that I grew up in. But as Donald Trump laid out, this was a decision that was intentionally conducted by the elected officials in New York State. They don't care about the citizenry. They only care about the ability to control the political headlines and rob people of their safety and their right to have businesses in New York State. And Donald Trump's leading out that charge. But Charlie, as you just stated, this is speaking to people outside of New York. It's not just New York, which may be the epicenter of business and industry in America, but people across the country are saying, wait a second, if they did it there, is the rogue prosecutor in Georgia going to take this up against Donald Trump or others down in Atlanta? What about in Chicago?
Trump and the Trump Organization were banned for 3 years from applying for loans from any financial institution registered or chartered with New York State. The judge.
So that was, I believe, eventually updated to they can get loans.
Did seem to back away from a previous directive in which he appeared to order the wind down of some of President Trump's and the family's businesses. It's worth noting that Letitia James had sought to have President Trump be barred permanently from New York's business world. But this is something I want the viewers to hear. Letitia James, her goal, she campaigned on attacking President Trump. Watch this.
No one is above the law, including this illegitimate president. I look forward to going into the office of Attorney General.
Illegitimate president? Is that the type of thing that, like, Trump was accused of? Is that linked to a rebellion, God forbid?
Every day, suing him, defending your rights, and then going home.
I say one name, Donald Trump. That should motivate you.
Will you sue him for us?
Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the He's going to know my name personally.
Will you sue him for us? What? What does that even mean? American politics has devolved into not, oh, will you make this country better? Will you make our political rivals' life miserable?
Kash, she used the statute, the executive law. It gives her, rather than, the courts and grand juries giving her subpoena power, she just had the subpoena power to fish through private documents, and then she could bring a civil fraud suit for inaccurate statements discovered in the process. This law, people have never challenged it because they're afraid of the repercussions of going after an attorney general. This could go all the way to the Supreme Court on the lack of constitutionality.
All of these New York verdicts, especially the guilty verdict, will be overturned by the Supreme Court.
Well, you're right. It's absolutely unconstitutional. It's going to get appealed. I think all the decisions and verdicts will be put on stay, as we call it. But as you showed in this video, as a prosecutor's code of conduct under the law, you're supposed to present the case and the facts to the law and the court without bias. She just presented herself time and time again during her campaign that the only thing she had was bias and animosity for President Trump. And her outcome was predetermined. She wanted to remove him from New York and the ballot. As President Trump said, this is all about election day interference. And here's the irony of it all. A figure like Bernie Madoff, who's an actual criminal, when he was convicted, he was barred from practicing in the securities field ever again. But no one barred him from conducting business in the state of New York. Are we to believe this decision, that President Trump is somehow worse than Bernie Madoff, and this political prosecutor jackal wants to ban him from the state of New York, who he's brought millions and millions of jobs to?
Yeah.
No, the judge said, oh, he's not Bernie Madoff, that he had to evoke that fraudster's name, that con artist's name. Go ahead, Charlie.
This isn't rocket science. Kash Patel and others have already talked about this. John Radcliffe, at the agency he's in, this isn't rocket science, okay? Kash Patel, John Radcliffe, Tulsi Gabbard, others within Trump's administration, well, mainly Patel and also Radcliffe, have the ability to look at classified data, to declassify anything they want. They also have the ability to look at government emails that were hidden or destroyed, between state and local prosecutors and Biden's Department of Justice. That would be breaking the law. If the Department of Justice and local and state prosecutors and district attorneys were conspiring in any way, shape, or form to imprison the direct political rival of Democrats, that's against the law. This isn't rocket science. There's like 10 other things they could do that don't involve like this grandiose plot to go after your direct political rivals. Or like, the Democrats will say, oh, this is an authoritarian plot. Did you break the law trying to imprison Trump on nonsense? Okay, he doesn't have servers. He doesn't have, bribery and graft schemes on laptops. So, okay, was there, yes or no, was there coordination between the federal government and New York and other states? Yes or no? It's a very simple question that Radcliffe and Patel can answer.
And I think the most important thing is the thing that you said a minute ago, Dagan, and that is that all of this is happening at a time when, and you alluded to this, Kash, as well, where like you can't walk down the street in New York without, having a crime committed against you. It seems like people are raiding stores. You can't go into a store and buy something because crime is so out of control here, and yet you have the New York Attorney General spending, and who knows how much money she spent pursuing this case. It's got to feel like that you're in bizarro world. It's like a three-ring circus. There's not a circus ridiculous enough to even come up with an analogy to compare all of this to.
Well, I think you hit one of the main talking points that I overlooked here. Her and the mayor in Chicago have something in common. They live in their own universe of protected influence. Yeah. The security details that the taxpayers kick in the state of New York for Letitia James runs in the 7 figures. She doesn't care about the state of New York City or its everyday citizenry because she lives 1,000 feet above them with her own.
In the United States, in a wonderful, free, red, conservative state, you have your own security detail. It's called the Second Amendment. You don't need to spend $30,000 like a Democratic congressperson a year for a security detail. Okay? It's like Democrats think that you could ban certain things and those problems won't happen. It's like, no, you can erase the Second Amendment tomorrow. The people who will acquire, what you wanted banned, will break the law like criminals. Criminals break the law. They don't abide by bans or new legislation. This is a very simple thing. And they're like, the rate per capita, they always go back to this stupid, sophomoric, vapid talking point. The rate per capita. No. If you're talking about a state that has tens of millions of people, you can go and look, unfortunately, in every place in the world, especially blue states in this country, when the poverty rate is above a certain percentage, it doesn't matter if you've banned this or that. Unfortunately, the poverty rate correlates directly to crime of all sorts. It does. Your liberal legislation is not going to prevent any types of crime if the poverty rate is a certain percentage higher than the average, and that unfortunately, I believe California has the highest poverty rate in the country. I believe that's accurate. If it's not accurate, let me know in the comments.
private security detail, cars, airplanes, and transportation. She doesn't ever go down the street and see the criminality of her own conduct. And that's the dichotomy between everyday citizens and what we have just seen happen to Donald J. Trump. And I think people across America are viewing this as a totally unconstitutional act that must be vindicated by the appellate courts. Otherwise, we will allow the weaponization of justice to be completed and rig presidential elections, and that can't stand.
Before we go, from a financial and economic perspective, this woman and this judge used a law that does not require fraudulent intent. You don't have to prove, you don't have to allege losses. We just lost Kash. Of National Intelligence.
What an amazing breath of fresh air. We're going to have this man for 4 years as the Federal Bureau of Investigation Director, hopefully 8 years. J.D. Vance is going to win in 28. I've predicted accurately now 2016, 2024. Okay, 4 years ago, 2020, we don't have to get into. But I predicted 2016, 2024. I'm telling you 2028, J.D. Vance. I don't see anyone touching J.D. Vance. Maybe this. No, I don't even think DeSantis.
Kash Patel. Kash, let's start with this CIA deputy.
Paul Bartlett, at last satisfied. Thank you to my super chat. Thank you so much, everybody. Greatly appreciate it. And I agree with you, at last satisfied. Thank you. Paul, thank you so very much as always.
Associate Deputy Director for Analysis. It's a big job. And in addition to this one Facebook post, there was another one with an image on Facebook posted years.
Let's go ahead and listen to this. He's amazing. Kash Patel is absolutely brilliant.
And we have been given a gift by God today to usher in a new dynasty, because we just inaugurated Donald J. Trump as our 47th president. And we just inaugurated J.D. Vance as our vice president of the United States. And we did that because the American dream is alive and well, because you chose that our dream can be the dream for our children and the dream for our world. And we are at a crossroads here in America. But our future is bright because you had the courage to stand for your convictions. So I'm humbled here to talk to you about why I love the American dream. My story's pretty simple, it's unique, and some of you share in it. My parents were born and raised in East Africa. My father in the 1970s fled a genocidal dictatorship in Uganda, where he saw 300,000 of his countrymen murdered, where he saw what lawlessness would do if it was allowed to break through the system of constitutional justice. He fled, like so many others. He married my mother. They moved here. They waited in line. They stood in line because the American dream was worth standing in line for. That dream is woven into the fabric of this nation. And our immigration policy is the greatest policy in the world. And now that we have Donald J. Trump and J.D. Vance, it will become the greatest policy in the world again. But dreams and hopes aren't enough, my friends. We got to get to work. And we got to accept the realities that too many of you know from your communities. President Trump launched in his first term priorities of national security, law enforcement, economy, and global diplomacy. But now we have to retread some of that. And I'd just like to go over a few of the things that our community has been living under these last few years. In the last calendar year alone, we had 100,000 drug overdoses. Constitutional law and order. When I read the statistic that for the age group of 18 to 45, the #1 cause of death is CCP fentanyl. President Trump and J.D. Vance's leadership and administration will usher in the priorities that I cherished during my 16 years in government service. That we will always, always honor the men and women who wear the cloth of our nation and stand on that wall and tell you nothing's getting by them tonight. And so to them, thank you.
And Trump and Patel and Radcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard will honor, I hope they will, and I believe they will honor the soldiers and veterans and their families by not sending them to never-ending military conflict, by not putting them in a terrible position the way Biden did when he completely ignored the Doha Agreement, which called for a May 1st withdrawal, not a haphazard summer withdrawal. Okay, Trump negotiated a specific plan to leave, to bring home Americans that Biden and Kerry and Clinton and the wonderful morally superior liberal Democrats and the Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld Republicans sent them to. That's how you go from Bernie Sanders to Trump. That's how you go from a lifelong Democrat to Trump. Trump is actually, in foreign policy, the liberal compared to Harris and Biden, the traditional liberal. But see, again, Democrats have become this almost like a social club. They don't really care about what's good for the country generally. They care about adhering to ideological talking points. If there's high inflation, if there's catastrophe on the world stage, no problem, as long as mean, bad Trump is in an office. Even though we had record low poverty with Trump, record highs in household median income, he had an anti-endless war foreign policy. He wasn't a pacifist, okay, but he was the anti-war choice. That's a fact. There's zero rebuttal to that. Compared to Harris and Biden, he was the anti-war choice. That made Trump a moral imperative. If you're a highly educated, morally superior liberal, and you've disowned friends and family, that's a foolish, foolish thing to do. Because the moral imperative was always Trump. That's why he won twice. That's why he won the popular vote, despite virtually 100% negative media coverage.
To our teachers and our frontline workers and our first responders, y'all choose to show up every single day for our children, for our communities, and we will now show up for you. Thank you for keeping us safe. To the men and women in law enforcement, and maybe I'm biased on this one, our police officers, our sheriffs, our federal agents are some of the greatest warriors that God has ever created. And we will put them first because they have our backs, and now we will have your backs.
So Democrats wanted to defund police. This was their platform, what they wanted, what the progressives wanted. Why don't they just own it? They don't own anything, from single payer to defunding the police to packing the courts to ending the filibuster to AOC's Green New Deal. They don't believe in anything they say. But Democrats and liberals and progressives wanted to defund police. Why don't they run on that in New York and California and throughout the country? Why don't they ever simply back up what they say? Why don't they believe in anything they say? Democrats wanted to defund the police. Okay. Own it, Democrats. Don't just pretend that you, they say these things, they're passionate, and then, in the most sheepish, cowardly manner, years later, they pretend, oh, we never said that. We never said that. Oh, yes, you did. Oh, yes, you did. Most Democrats said that.
I am standing here because of the American dream. I am not standing here because of the color of my skin. I'm standing here because I earned my right on this stage, and you earned your right to be here with me. And I promise you this, with every fiber of my being, that our law enforcement, that our teachers, that our first responders, that our veterans, that our men and women in uniform who dare to serve this country and put themselves below the rest of our needs will be reprioritized to the top of the heap because they are standing on that wall, and we will not let that light go dark on them.
How many soldiers do Democrats fire because of they wouldn't do something? Okay, and so now we have them hopefully coming back, thank God, with Trump and Pete Hegseth.
Whether I was a national security prosecutor, a public defender, President Trump's deputy director of national intelligence, his chief of staff at the Department of Defense, or so many other roles that I was humbled and privileged to serve when I swore an oath to that Constitution, which I hope to do so again one day soon. You have my word that you have ushered in a dynasty of change. You have ushered in a dynasty that will allow our children to live this American dream. My American dream. I am living the world's American dream. I am the son of lawful immigrants. We worked our tails off just like you all do, and I'm going to make you a deal. I promise you I will never quit on your children. I will never quit on their children, because this American dream does not belong to me. It does not belong to them. This American dream belongs to the world.
Trump loves, Kash Patel loves, Tulsi Gabbard loves, right? They all, Make America Great Again Republicans love immigrants. To say otherwise is a deceitful, malicious statement. Legal. They are focused on either legal or undocumented or illegal. If you go through the proper channels, this is not a sinister thing. This is not diabolical. There are laws that exist. I understand why people risk their lives. I have friends who are dreamers. I love them. They like, the people I know love Trump, by the way. Okay? I think they should be given citizenship, the dreamers, and Trump offered them citizenship. Democrats said, no, we don't want to build a wall. So they said no citizenship for dreamers. This is a fact. He offered them citizenship. Trump did in his first term. But the way Democrats roll is they want that carrot always. Vote for us. We'll help you. They don't help anyone. Democrats don't. The Democratic Party hasn't truly helped anyone or any of the core constituents for decades. Or at least, you know, in recent memory, I can't name something that it's a liberal version of the Bush-Cheney-Rumsfeld Republican Party with communists and socialists who always vote for the same people who Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney vote for. So, I mean, help me make sense of that. But there's a difference between legal and doing things that are not legal. If you waited in line, Trump loves you. Okay? His wife is an immigrant. He loves immigrants. If you didn't wait in line, and I understand the pressures, and I understand the economic incentive, and I understand that, but the way Democrats, oh, Trump, he's bigoted towards this, and no, he never was. That was a lie, a blatant lie. Same thing with, like, you know, I'm not going to name the specific names, but people in Trump's administration, oh, he's so draconian. He's not draconian. You know, 300,000 young people have been essentially lost by Democrats. Okay, and then they said, oh, it's just a record keeping. No, it's not. That's not a paperwork issue. I read the fact check. I don't know if it was Associated Press. It's not a paperwork issue. They have no clue where human beings are. They have no clue at all. Of all ages. They have zero clue. AOC suddenly doesn't care when things are actually far worse in terms of human rights violations.
So in closing, I just want to tell you this. It's pretty cool to be speaking in Capital One Arena right before the boss. You've inspired me beyond words. Your love, your devotion, your commitment to our country, everywhere I go, shows us that we are not only the beacon of hope, but we are the land of constitutional justice. We are the land under Donald J. Trump and J.D. Vance where we are going to end the two-tier system of justice. We are going to remove the weaponization of the intelligence community for political purposes. And we are going to put the men and women of America first. So listen, there's just one thing left to do. We all got work to do. We've got the greatest president and the greatest vice president in the history of the world. And so I just need you all to do a little bit more. Every time you see a law enforcement officer, every time you see a veteran, every time you see a teacher, shake their hand. Give them a little bit of your time, because they're giving us all of our time. And don't forget to enjoy the ride, ladies and gentlemen. God bless America. God bless these United States of America. God bless every one of you. I'm living the American dream. My name is Kash Patel, and I ain't going anywhere. Let's go to work.
What an amazing change from the lifelong corporate centrist suits, the bureaucrats, lifelong bureaucrats. What an amazing change. And you know what? Let's just go back in time. Devin Nunes, Kash Patel, they told you exactly. I mean, I was telling you this. I didn't have their knowledge. I didn't know what they knew at that time. But I was telling you the accusing Trump of being a Kremlin operative was absurd nonsense. It was a McCarthy-era Red Scare creation by Democrats because they couldn't accept losing in 2016. And now they can't accept losing, and they say, don't go to Thanksgiving. It's like, it's more turkey for the Trumpers. It's fine. You're hurting yourself by not going to Thanksgiving. But hit subscribe, ladies and gentlemen, if you're new. Let's go back. Let's take a trip down memory lane.
Which, for those of your viewers who don't know what this is like the prominent left-wing think tank here in our nation's capital. And we think there's a connection between the president of Brookings and those dossiers that were given to the State Department that mirrored the Steele dossiers, which, look, all of this, what does this mean? This was the Clinton campaign's dossiers. It was the dirt. It was a phony story that they sold not only to the American people, but they sold it and corrupted our FBI, where it appears like these dirty cops were more than willing to take this information and present it to the FISA court.
Yes, that was Congressman Devin Nunes on this program back in 2020, exposing direct links between the Brookings Institute and Christopher Steele's fabricated dossier, which was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton and her campaign and the Democratic National Committee. Last week, Steele's primary subsource, Igor Danchenko, who was also an analyst at Brookings, was arrested and charged with 5 counts of lying to the FBI. The third indictment in special counsel John Durham's probe. He has since pleaded not guilty. My next guest took the depositions of several of the players.
By the way, the Durham probe did not have a Central Intelligence, a Bureau Director, a Department of Justice that backed. So John Durham was actually, his resume is very impressive. He was a very good prosecutor. He did not have the support, the political support, or the support in government that he needed. This is a completely new cabinet, a complete sea change in American politics, a complete paradigm shift, ladies and gentlemen. Hit subscribe, by the way. We have over 3,000 live viewers. Very, very honored. Hit subscribe if you're new.
Who were pushing the phony Russia collusion lie. Former Pentagon Chief of Staff Kash Patel joins me right now. He, along with Devin Nunes, cracked open this case 3-4 years ago. Kash, it's good to see you this morning in a snowy Pennsylvania. Great looking shot there.
Great to be with you, Maria. Thanks so much for having me from Happy Valley.
So, Kash, connect the dots for us. You heard Devin talking about the Brookings Institute. I'll bring up the graphic of Durham's indictment of Danchenko. Talking about Danchenko working as an analyst at Washington-based bank think tank, which is the Brookings Institute, where he focused on Russia and Eurasian geopolitical matters. Tell me about the connection that Danchenko had in Brookings.
Yeah, that's a great starting point. And let's front load the conversation, Maria. John Durham issued subpoenas to the Brookings Institute. I don't think most of America knows that, but he actually issued federal grand jury subpoenas for documentation, which we now know he used in his indictment against Danchenko. And who was Danchenko? Danchenko was Fiona Hill's former research assistant. Who is Fiona Hill? The world probably remembers. She's the one who conjured up the Ukraine impeachment fiasco in her time at the White House. And why is she important? Fiona Hill connected Danchenko to Christopher Steele. A political operative in the White House connected Christopher Steele to his primary source.
The Steele dossier, by the way, that led to an actual Federal Election Commission fine leveled against the DNC and the Clinton campaign. Yet Trump was allegedly committed the felony, even though the FEC dropped the case. The FEC literally dropped the case against Trump, and the Federal Election Commission actually fined Democrats. But of course, Trump is found guilty.
And allowed her to get all this false information into the FBI. How does that relate to Charlie Dolan? Fiona Hill also connected Charlie Dolan, the Clinton ally operative, to now Danchenko, the indicted individual under Durham, whose documentation was recovered by John Durham, thankfully, through his lawful and appropriate use of federal subpoenas. And I think he's got a lot more coming.
What happened with the Steele dossier, a grand jury is saying was criminal in nature, and I expect that all of the folks that are involved with creating it and peddling it falsely would be in jeopardy.
So this is John Ratcliffe, the head of Central Intelligence. You just heard Kash Patel. You'll hear him again. The new director in a couple of days for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Then you'll have Tulsi Gabbard. We don't need McConnell and Collins and Murkowski. We just need J.D. Vance for the tie-breaking vote. Hit subscribe if you're new to this channel. This is a complete paradigm shift because they all know that people committed crimes. It is against the law to utilize a dossier to lie to the American people, to say that it's not a lie. When Democrats and media say Trump lied about 4 years ago, that's not a lie. He's allowed to distrust the Democratic Party. Okay? He's allowed to say that anomalies and very bizarre occurrences took place, and he doesn't feel that he was treated fairly. Okay? That is not a categorical or patently false statement. That's an emotional statement. He's allowed to say that he doesn't feel that he's allowed to say that Democrats treated him the way they treated Biden and before that Bernie Sanders. Okay? Because they have a history of doing this. It is a categorical, patently false lie, one of the greatest or biggest ever told, that Trump was a Kremlin operative. There was not even a shred, not one shred of evidence. And if the rebuttal is, well, there was intelligence reports, yeah, by people who hate him, by people who despise him. And John Brennan stated, I don't do evidence, I do intelligence. Okay? John Brennan stated under oath that he doesn't do evidence. He does intelligence. The implication there is that intelligence doesn't have to be evidence. Okay? It could just be a gut feeling. It could just be suspicion. Well, then, they just accused Trump and created a new Red Scare and McCarthy era simply because they didn't accept losing in 2016. They're the ones who didn't have a peaceful transfer of political power. Okay, Trump had literally nothing to do. He performed a speech and people committed crimes. What does that have to do with his speech? He has every right to say he doesn't trust Democrats.
And that was former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe with me last week on this program on what he declassified, which, of course,
TJ, thank you. Everyone here, thank you for the kind words, and thank you for your super chat and your support. The members on this channel, thank you. Hit subscribe, ladies and gentlemen, if you're new.
Exposed that this dossier and whole Russia collusion lie was a fabrication from Hillary Clinton. I am back with Kash Patel right now. And Kash, we mentioned Fiona Hill making all of these introductions to Christopher Steele as well as Charles Dolan. Meanwhile, she says she has no idea what they were doing. Here is a quote from her from a closed-door testimony from October of 2019 saying, "I have no knowledge whatsoever of how he developed that dossier. None. I just want to state that." What are your thoughts on this? And give us your sense.
Of course, you could have no knowledge of how someone developed a dossier. Of course, that could be very true. That could be a truthful statement. Do you think maybe that a very intelligent, well-connected individual understood that a compilation of lies printed on paper could be used against Trump? Gee, I'm wondering if that's possible.
Of the 3 indictments we've seen so far and where this is going.
Yeah, real quick on Fiona Hill. I think John Durham is on the case here because Fiona Hill has a credibility problem. I believe she lied to Congress there under oath. She connected the main Clinton political operative, who Devin and I had never heard of because DOJ and FBI withheld those documents from us.
Ethel, doing well, thank God. Hope you're doing well. Thanks, everybody, for the kind words.
Intentionally, I believe so. And now John Durham has exposed that. She connects the Steele operation to the Democratic Party, and she has the gall to go on national TV or into closed-door testimony and say, I don't know what's going on with Steele. But John Durham's on that case, and I think we're going to get there. As to the 3 indictments that John Durham has issued, I believe he's built a sort of triangle of indictments, as I call them. At the top of the pyramid, you have Sussman, who represents an indictment of the Hillary Clinton campaign, the DNC, the law firm, and Fusion GPS, funneling tens of millions of dollars to perpetuate the biggest fraud in American history into the FBI. The bottom 2 pillars of the Durham triangle, I believe, are the FBI's, John Durham's indictment of the FBI attorney, which is literally an indictment of the FBI and now a criminal conviction for lying to a federal court to perpetuate a fraud. And
so Durham is very accomplished, very his resume is very impressive, and he's, if you look at I don't want to go into the prosecutions, but they were very, very high profile in the Northeast. Okay, very high profile. But he wasn't given. So Durham is a very, very good prosecutor, but he wasn't given the support. He wasn't given the support needed to really prosecute people who broke the law. I mean, he did all he could, but, you know, he wasn't given the political support. Media, of course, tried to disparage everything he did. And you had Republicans who weren't even on board. So, but now it's a completely new ballgame.
Get a FISA warrant falsely. The last leg of the Durham triangle comes in the form of his recent indictment of Danchenko. Who's Danchenko and why does it matter? Danchenko is Steele's main source, introduced to Steele by Fiona Hill, who Steele relied on to write his dossier, in which he said Steele, received credible information from Danchenko. We now know Danchenko's a liar. We also know, because of the Durham investigation.
So Danchenko did not get convicted. Again, but that was in large part because Durham had no political momentum. The interesting thing here is that the incoming cabinet, well, let's continue.
Danchenko provided no credible information to Christopher Steele. So his credibility has been destroyed, and these merchants of menace are finally coming to light thanks to John Durham's great work. And he's got a long way to go. And I'm glad he's getting the the information that Rod Rosenstein and Chris Wray intentionally withheld from Chairman Nunes in our investigation during Russiagate probe.
So on the Kevin Kleinsmith indictment, this is the FBI attorney. Does it end there, or are we going to see a road to others in the FBI, perhaps getting arrested for directing Kevin Kleinsmith? This is a young guy who obviously changed paperwork to say that Carter Page was not an asset of the CIA when, in fact, he was.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Look, I think all roads lead to Andy McCabe, the former deputy director of the FBI, who was caught lying 3 times.
By the way, I believe this is very interesting. I believe there's a CNN interview with the Honorable James Comey. with what's his name? Tapper. Jake Tapper. Where Jake Tapper asks him, would you be willing to testify against Andrew McCabe? And then I think in the background, it's this song, Dionne Warwick song, That's What Friends Are For. And the Honorable James Comey says, potentially, possibly, potentially. He alluded to potentially testifying against Andrew McCabe. So, I mean, it's just unbelievable.
By the Inspector General during his tenure there. Kevin Kleinsmith, a mid-level FBI attorney, cannot pull off the greatest political scandal in history alone. He needs direction from his supervisors. He's a convicted felon. He doctored a piece of paper for the FISA court. Now, as a former national security prosecutor who did FISAs, know how horrendous and how egregious that type of conduct is. But more importantly, I know that it cannot be done alone. It is virtually impossible to get that information to a federal judge for a secret surveillance warrant without the deputy director of the FBI knowing it. And I think all roads lead to Andy McCabe. His credibility is in question, not to mention that of Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and Andy McCabe, who orchestrated the insurance policy to prevent Donald Trump from becoming president.
So you have how many text messages, emails, correspondence, letters, documents do you think that Radcliffe and Patel can declassify that were not declassified, that potentially helped a whole bunch of people in government evade prosecution or conviction? Senator Lindsey Graham, this is CBS. Senator Lindsey Graham says he's ready to vote for Patel for Federal Bureau of Investigation Director. Lindsey Graham is like the barometer of the Senate Republicans, the Republican Party. It doesn't matter if Mitch McConnell or Glitch McConnell votes for, it doesn't matter if McCaskey and Collins, you just need J.D. Vance, just like Hegseth. Pam Bondi will be confirmed, Kash Patel will be confirmed, Tulsi Gabbard will be confirmed. You are going to have numerous indictments within the next year and a half, probably a lot sooner. Numerous. Okay, Trump is not just going to, allow the people who try to destroy his life, in overtly criminal ways, he's not just going to allow that people to act with impunity. Okay, people went after Trump and they almost certainly broke the law. Okay, Trump is not an authoritarian, or his Department of Justice won't be, totalitarian for going after people who broke the law. If you're a liberal Democrat and you learned anything about the McCarthy era, why did you recreate it when Clinton lost? Okay? The same people you worshipped, John Brennan, James Comey, all of these wonderful people that you worshipped. Well, now let's see if Democrats worship Kash Patel. Let's see if Democrats respect John Radcliffe, just the way they did with Brennan and Comey and Andrew McCabe and Wray and others. Hit subscribe to this channel, people. God bless you all. Thank you for, we're at 272,000 subscribers. We're on our way to 300,000 because of you. To my super chat, thank you. God bless you, everybody.